Is it utterly stupid for me to turn off my social media, to turn off my podcast, to turn off my YouTube, to turn off my Instagram and go on a digital sabbatical? As that is something I literally did at the end of last year. And I wrote this specifically in an article. And what I wrote was, I've decided it's time to pull the modern day Houdini. Poof! Gone is the consistent buzz of notifications, the endless curated feeds, and the endless scroll of just scrolling at the end of the day. As I was turning off my YouTube, my podcast, and my Instagram, and I didn't know when I was actually going to be turning it back on. As for myself, I had a profound realization. And this is what I came to and why I wanted to share this with you today. I had a realization that my daughters are this age only once. I have 4 daughters that age range from 2 to 11 right now, 1 to 10 back then. And it was a gentle reminder of myself that we have a last time with everything. And for myself as a father watching my daughters grow, these moments were particularly poignant as they significantly transition from one stage of life to another. And these last time magical moments are glaringly apparent to me. So right now, I get to be able to sweep up my daughters and hold them close to my chest, and I can feel their heart beating. And there will be a last time where they're going to want me to actually pick them up and where I get to put them back down. There's going to be a last time where I get to be able to read a bedtime story with them, where they want to do their own thing. My eldest daughter recently said that to me. And these are the things for me where I had to really check myself before I wreck myself. And it came to a point where I needed to be able to do things differently. I needed to hit the pause button. I knew I wasn't using social media and all of that stuff the right way. And it was just consuming of me thinking of it as a creator as well. And I only wanted to come back here to share this stuff with you when I knew that I had my shit sorted as well. I'm not going to be a dude saying I've got all of my shit together when I clearly didn't or don't, because I think that's an absolute sham. And where I come to it today, why I came back turning this on, is because I came back knowing that I'm trying to figure my stuff out. I've learned some really good stuff. I've done some really good stuff that's worked. I've made plenty of mistakes. How do I best share that with you, warts and all? And that's why I wanted to share this with you today.
Back in October, middle of October, you stepped away you took a digital sabbatical from your podcast, from YouTube, from Instagram. What inspired that? What did you learn from that? And what's it been like to come back to the space?
I appreciate you asking. I had a few things happen in life where it was tugging at me. And then when I truly looked upon myself, when I truly reflected upon myself, when I was truly asking myself, like, what is best for me to actually show up as a man, as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, as a son, I kept seeing a thread pulling back to these other things, such as the podcast, the YouTube, the Instagram, the social media, all of that stuff, being like, well, that's not aligned with me. And so I felt like I had gone through this transition. Do you know of Alison Armstrong's work?
Oh,
okay. So
we might hear Lindsay laugh over there.
Yeah, there was a chuckle.
I just came into it through Chase, who you just met. I came into it as I was popping out of the tunnel. And it gave me context for what the fuck I just experienced over the past 3 years.
So I got introduced to her work with me midway through the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And which would have been when we last met.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
We're tunnel brothers.
Oh, dude. I'd sold the company, sold the last company. We had moved. We were living in Bali for 9 years. And my wife and I had decided it's time for a change. It's time for us to move. And then Australia was kind of like the next step that we thought we were going to go back to, but not back to Sydney where we were from. So for me, it was 11 years being outside of Australia. So it was 11 years living in it as an expat. It was 11 years that went from me as a transition from personal trainer to online fitness business to then online business coaching to then the company that eventually then sold. And so all of these things happen in life that was then like, oh, I'm different. I'm unsure. I was completely flabbergasted. I was not myself. And then I learned about Alison's work, went deep diving into that, and it was very interesting because both my wife and I could be like, oh, I'm in the tunnel right now. Like this is it. And then when I went back through the math of the timing that she had, I was like, this is bang on. Like I was astounded by how accurate she was with the timing of everything. Yet I was 36 at the time as well. So like that was the one thing I was like, well, I'm a lot younger than what she said everything was, but I did start younger when it came to like really putting my nose to the ground and working hard and dedicating myself and blah, blah, blah. And so I felt like after coming out of the tunnel, I'm a different human being. I literally felt different. And I struggled then being able to look back into the boy that was not that long ago. And so for me, it was a case of I'm a different human being and I need to first know myself before I can then really start to share this out. I also see a lot of performative authenticity that's like out in the world right now. And I just wasn't vibing with it. And I was like, no, I don't know me. I've got to sort my shit out. I'm turning all this stuff off because I don't feel like I'm giving the world my best self when I don't even know who really I am right now. So then I decided, I was like, you know what? None of my income was actually related to any of the social media stuff anyway. So I was like, fuck it, I'm turning it off. And so I just made that decision and I made that very clear, distinct experiment to myself. I was like, I'm going to turn all of this stuff off until I sort my own stuff out, until I'm clear with where I want to take my life. And then if I want to turn it back on, I'll turn it back on. And then I came back to this point where I was clearly out of the tunnel and I was like, I feel good. I feel clear. I feel strong. I feel like I'm standing on my ground and now I can actually be able to give. And it's been astounding coming from this position now. Really astounding.
Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that. The ball's in your court.
I love that, dude. It so resonates with me. I came back to Instagram, kind of, it was almost like as I popped out of the tunnel, I came back to Instagram and it just, as you said, like I knew who I was. I knew the ground I stood on. I was very clear about what I wanted to share. It didn't feel performative. It felt like this is me. This is my shit. This is maybe something that might help. And if not, like I'm going to try to make it fun and funny and silly, but also have some nuggets in there if you're curious about it. And it's become really fun to explore that, because it was very different than what the previous 3 years had been. It had been mostly just podcast trailers, and I just didn't have anything to share that was worthwhile because I didn't know who the fuck I was. And it's like you were talking about this concept, and it's really this, we go from such certainty to uncertainty, and it's to really surrender to that, I think, is a big challenge. And, you know, I think I was unwilling to, on some level, not know what the fuck was going on. And so I would continue to, use different stimulants to create some sort of creativity, energy, some wherewithal to get moving every day, when really I just needed to surrender to what was happening and pay attention. And maybe that prolonged my tunnel period. Who knows? What I am pretty clear on is that popping out of that gave me so much context for why that 3-year period for me. I mean, it may have been longer than 3. She says it's 6 months to 3 years. I would argue mine was closer to 4, but it was really challenging, you know, but and I was curious, like what it's felt like to come back, and you just said it, you're just clear. And so it's not even like it's probably not even a conscious decision in some ways. It's like, this is just what I meant to do. And I see you're sharing a lot of stuff that feels really true for you and very consistently. So what has that process been like versus what it was like 6, 8, 12 months ago?
So just before the trip where we first got together, I had just gone through some pretty intense depression and suicidal ideation. Like I was in a really dark place before then. And then being able to work through that and see that as a gift might be too strong of a word to give it, but it was something I was able to then work through and feel stronger after it. And being able to now creatively, my position when I create and when I share is simply, I'm just trying to work on my shit and work through myself and be my best self. And if there is anything that I can then leave as breadcrumbs and trails and be able to share from what my experience is and somebody else can profit, amazing. If you don't, that's cool either. But ideally, like I'm sitting right now in this conversation because I want to learn from you. I want to see what comes out with me. I want this just to be a fascinating conversation from myself. And it would be amazing as well when the listener and viewer is able to take something positive from that as well. I think that's a win-win-win that's incredible at the same point. But from my perspective, when I sit down and I write an essay, it's because the topic of that essay, the question, the problem that I'm actually solving is something I have to solve for myself. And the book that I'm writing at the moment, I think it's going to be called The Art of Enough or Enough is Enough or something. It's around the concept of what is enough. And from my perspective, I was so driven by money from an early age because I grew up in a family that didn't have money. Both of my parents were 17 when I was born. And so I've been gifted with these really young parents. And my journey was seeing as living in a family that did not have money, seeing my parents work and slog so goddamn hard to be able to best provide for me. Them clearly say as well, like, we never gave you a cent. Like, you have been able to create all of this yourself as you've gone through it. And I love and appreciate that that was the experience that I've gone through. I've gone through the forgiveness exercises. I've gone through all the therapy and psychotherapy. I've done a shit ton of psychedelics. Like, I've done that stuff, which has been incredible as well. And I see how it's helped in different facets and all the different therapies and healings and all of those things as well. So when I sit down now to be able to create, whether it's an essay, whether it's shooting a video for YouTube, whether it's having a conversation for a podcast, whether it's an Instagram post, it's literally me wanting to be able to have some transmission, some creativity, some answer be able to come through that helps me to be able to work through it. And so a lot of the time, there was a recent post that I did and I shared it initially, and then it actually came from a letter that I wrote to myself. And so I actually just put it into the format, which is like, to Chris. And then I went through it. And a bunch of people just lost their shit reading it because they resonated with that same message as well. And a lot of the things where I am looking at beliefs within myself, and I look at this belief and I really try and see it. Is it best serving me? Is this actually helping me be me right now? Because when I think about a question such as, why am I not being the fullest expression of myself? Why am I not achieving or being or doing the things that I really want to be able to have? And then being able to say, well, what are the possible beliefs that I'm having that are stopping me from showing up in this way? For example, like in the car when we were driving here, we're having a discussion and I had said that a mutual friend of ours said something, and to me, I really picked up. I was like, oh, I've really been half-assing a few different areas of what I've been doing, especially when it came to the creativity and everything like that as well. Like, my company and money making is over here. Do you know what I mean? So therefore, I'm not having to do this and create and shoot and interview and do all of these other things for money. I'm doing it because I want this to be an expression and betterment for myself. And so being able to come from that context has been empowering, to say the least.
Now, as I say at the end of the essay, I'm not saying that this is your path. Heck, your journey might involve more social media, not less. But here's the nugget to munch on as we wrap up this episode. And that is the question, what sets your soul on fire? And because whatever it is, I believe, and this is for myself, I'm saying this to myself, chase it with all you've got. Because regrets aren't born from the leaps that we took, but they're going to come from the ones that we've hesitated to take. And I think I actually wrote something good there. So I'm going to leave this episode at that, and I'll see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.